This program offers 14 rules for navigating the river called life. Each lesson builds upon the other. So if you have not yet had a chance to view our previous lessons, we strongly recommend that you take a moment to do so before viewing this lesson. You'll find links to all of our lessons on our website, ariverworthriding.wordpress.com. And remember, as always, to take one rule at a time, give it 1 week's strict attention, and leave everything else to its ordinary chance. Taken together, these rules make for a worthwhile ride. As always, let's begin with a story. For the longest time, I drifted, until I met a captain who looked really good in shorts. So I tied my boat up to his and climbed on board. His boat was kind of messy, so I started to clean. I kept waiting for him to say thank you, but he was too busy navigating to notice how his boat now sparkled from my work. So I spent my savings on boat improvements, and I brought things over from my boat so that he could see how useful I was. Still, he barely noticed. Eventually, I got mad at being taken for granted and decided to teach him a lesson. So I stomped back to my boat, which by this time was listing badly with neglect. But instead of casting off and getting my boat in order, I kept messing with the rope connecting our boats until we both almost capsized. After a week, I went back to his boat to see if he had missed me. He waved and asked me to fix him a cheese sandwich. Despite my desire to throw the cheese at his head, I fixed him a sandwich. After all, his boat was nicer than my own, and most of my things were aboard her anyway. Then one day I heard a rumor that another gal had been seen making my captain cheese sandwiches. How dare she? How dare he? Back to my leaky boat I went, where I sulked in a foot of water and did nothing of importance for weeks, except for plotting revenge against my captain's new girlfriend's boat, which kept me very occupied. By the time I got the energy and nerve to cast off, I was in very deep trouble. I suddenly found myself on a very different river with a totally inadequate boat. I nearly drowned. For the longest time I drifted, until I met a captain who looked really good in shorts. So I tied my boat up to his and climbed on board. You can't take the rapids in an oil tanker. And if you're trying to make it downriver with a leaky boat, you're going to spend your whole life bailing, too terrified to rest for even a moment. So pull under the shore and get your boat in order. If you're exhausted, it's time to reflect upon the cause of your exhaustion. Your ride will be smoother and a lot more fun. The rule of reflection states that the river you perceive is a reflection of who you are. Put simply, if you have a problem with the world and the people in it, you are seeing a reflection of a corresponding problem inside yourself. Moreover, if you try to solve your problems on the outside without considering your problems from the inside, you'll keep running into the same problems. And your problems outside won't go away until you adjust and correct the corresponding problems from within. Strangely enough, if you don't believe this rule, you won't see its application anywhere, and you may as well stop watching now. But if you do believe this rule, you will see its application everywhere. Suddenly the world will become one giant classroom with you as the most important subject. The more you understand yourself, the more you'll understand the world. And the more you understand the world, the clearer you'll understand yourself. Let me give you an example of what I mean. I had a partner with whom I worked for several years, and during the entire time we were together, I was mostly discontented with the partnership. I wanted to fix our relationship. I wanted clarification on what our relationship was. Once more, I wanted that clarification to come from my partner. I wanted him to clarify for me what he wanted out of our partnership. I guess on some weird level, I figured that if I could just understand what he wanted clearly enough, then I could adjust everything in my life to fit into his pattern of things. My desire to get clarification from someone else reflected how dependent I was on him. It also reflected how unclear I was about what I wanted.
But once I understood that I was the one who needed clarification, that I needed to clarify for myself exactly what I wanted, my course became obvious. Because when I did actually clarify what I wanted from life, it became painfully obvious that I didn't want him. I wanted some unrealized version of him, something that I had imagined. My problem had been in how I had defined my problem. He wasn't my problem, I was my problem. When I fixed myself, my problem with him just disappeared. I will always be grateful to my partner. He became a reflection of what I needed to learn. In fact, everything in life is a reflection of what we need to learn if only we see it that way. When we start to integrate the rule of reflection into the way we interpret our lives, many misunderstandings and problems disappear. For example, I used to worry about approval from others. When I started to approve of myself, I stopped worrying. When I stopped worrying and started doing, people started to approve of me. I used to wish people would listen to me, until I started listening to myself. The more I listened to myself, the more fascinated I became with listening to others. The more I listened to others, the more people seemed to want to listen to me. When I fixed the problem in me, the corresponding problem in the world stopped having an effect on me. The problem disappeared. Reflection says that perhaps the reason I don't trust people is because I don't trust my ability to understand why people act the way they do. If I could learn to trust my understanding of people, then my trust of people might return. After all, there is one thing that I can always trust about people. They're human. Reflection says that the cause of unsatisfactory relationships with others is an unsatisfactory relationship with myself. When I learn to like myself, to believe in myself, and to know my own value, then my outward relationships will stop affecting my ability to feel satisfied. Reflection can help us decipher so many problems. I once had a student who spent the first 2 weeks in my class obsessing about her 12-year-old son and what was wrong with his behavior. So I asked her one day, "Does he do drugs, hang out with dangerous crowds, break the law?" "No." "Are you afraid he's going to hurt himself in some way?" "No, he's a great kid. He's so smart. He could do so much if he would only try harder. I keep telling him that he could be more if he would just work at it, but he doesn't listen to me. He rolls his eyes at me behind my back." At this point, I wondered who had not been listening to whom. I asked her to pretend that I was her son and to role-play a typical discussion. What followed was a list of all the things that I, as her son, should be doing. She would have gone on for an hour if I had not stopped her. I said straight out, "If I were your son and that's how you spoke to me, then I'd roll my eyes at you too." That comment stopped her in mid-sentence. "What do you think your son is hearing when you talk to him?" I continued. "Because what I just heard is that you don't think he's good enough and you want him to change. Who would want to listen to that? If you were my friend and all you ever did was lecture me about what I ought to be doing, I wouldn't want to listen to you either. It doesn't matter what you mean to say. What matters is what he hears. You may think that you're offering loving advice, but I think that he's hearing that you don't think he's good enough. I mean, you said yourself that he's a good kid and not in any trouble. Have you ever thought that maybe he needs less of your advice and more of your approval? Maybe if you listened to him for a change, talked with him instead of at him, he might stop rolling his eyes and start wanting your opinion." After I finished my tirade, we talked about her situation with the class for a while and developed a strategy that she agreed to. She would hold back any advice for 1 week and see what happened. Of course, if he acted out or got into trouble, she would be allowed to discipline him, but other than that, she would plan to only have fun with her son that week. She would spend time with him, play with him, and listen to him, but she would avoid probing him or advising him in any way. A few weeks later, she confided shyly to the class that the night before, her son had put his arms around her and said, "I love you, Mommy." He hasn't done that in ages, she admitted, near tears. When my student redefined the problem that she was having with her son as a reflection of a problem in herself and how she communicated her love and concern, she was able to open up herself to a strategy that created the cause she wanted. Her son stopped rolling his eyes and started opening up to her. How often do we try to help people who don't need our help or advice? They just need our understanding. How many conflicts start with a misunderstanding? How many people expect us to listen to them but never listen to us? How many parents demand their children's respect without doing anything to earn that respect? Respect is earned. Respect is not a right. Respect is the resulting effect that we receive when we live a worthwhile life. So how can you use reflection to clarify your life? The next time you feel upset by what someone says about you, remember that what people say about you is never an accurate reflection of you. What people say about you is really a reflection of them. When people complain about you, they are really saying something about who they are and what they believe. Their words are clues to the struggles that they are having inside. So instead of just hearing the words that others use, you should try listening to the messages behind their words. When you understand what others intend, you can act upon their intentions with understanding. And whenever you are frustrated with someone else, remember that any frustration you feel is usually a reflection of something lost inside of you, something that wants to be made whole. Make yourself whole and the frustration goes away. Follow this rule, and you will actually begin to see life's frustrations as divine gifts designed to help you understand yourself. In other words, listen to what you say about others. What you say about others says everything about you. Consider this example. I know of a man that loves to talk about his wife. He loves to tell everyone that his wife makes his life miserable. He loves to say, "You can't talk to her. She's got an attitude. She doesn't make sense." Every word he utters shines a light on the chasm he's dug for himself. You see, this man does not know how to listen, and everyone sees it but him. He was in my English class. On the first day of class, I announced that a test would be held in 2 weeks. I even wrote the date of the test on the board and left it there for the entire 2 weeks. Each day, I would write questions from that day's lecture under the test date, and I would tell everyone to study those questions for the test. I even left the page numbers where people could find answers to the study questions on the board. I devoted the day before the test to class review, and for 50 minutes I talked about the test, told people what to study. I even pointed out the areas of the test that people usually got wrong. When I dismissed the class, he came up to me and asked, "When is page 51 due?" "There's nothing due," I told him. "You just need to study page 51 for the test." "Test?" "Yes, tomorrow's test." "We have a test?" I took him gently by the shoulders, turned him to face the board, and pointed to the test announcement that I'd written there. Then I said, as slowly and as carefully as I could, "Tomorrow you have a test. You must study those 6 sections of your book because the answers to the test questions are in those 6 sections." "You're kidding," he said, listening for the first time. "We have to know all that by tomorrow?" This student likes to say that his wife doesn't make sense. Well, the power of reflection suggests that his real problem is not understanding how to make sense of her. And it's tough to make sense of anyone when you don't know how to listen. This student's not unusual. He's just the obvious example. We all find it easier to blame the river for our problems, but the river is just the river, and it's not changing anytime soon. So if you want to fix your problems, start by fixing yourself. Okay, so here's your homework for this lesson. Spend this full week listening to what others say about you and listening to what you say about others. Use the principles of reflection to understand what's really going on beneath people's words. For example, suppose someone says you don't make sense. Well, reflection might translate that they have trouble making sense of me. Suppose someone says you're unreasonable. Reflection might translate that they don't understand my logic. Suppose someone says my life's out of control. Reflection might translate that they've been focusing their attention on what they don't control. Suppose someone says I'm disorganized. Well, reflection might translate they haven't defined their priorities. Suppose someone says I can't. Well, reflection might translate that they don't know how to. Someone says you never listen. Reflection might translate that they feel I don't understand them. Suppose someone says my boss is a jerk. Well, perhaps they think that they're powerless to influence their boss. Suppose someone says you're wrong. Well, maybe they're threatened by my opinion, or they think that their way is the only way and that my way doesn't count. Someone says nothing ever works around here. Well, maybe they're having a bad day. Or maybe they think that other people are supposed to fix their problems. Someone says, I should. It usually means they really would rather not. I'm disappointed in you could mean that I forgot to keep a promise and created mistrust. Or I did not live up to their expectations, and I forgot to explain that their expectations are not necessarily my expectations. Perhaps I need to kindly point out that I'm only responsible for living up to my own expectations, while they are responsible for living up to theirs. If someone says you need to loosen up, it may mean they want me to loosen up so that they can feel more comfortable. Or they're simply inviting me to play. Someone says I'm doing the best I can could mean they don't know any other way. Someone saying he's a troublemaker probably means that they have trouble dealing with him. And if someone says it's too hard, perhaps they don't feel up to the challenge, or maybe they've forgotten the power of process. And how about using the power of reflection to understand yourself? Well, suppose you catch yourself saying, people use me. Reflection asks that you consider, perhaps I need to set some boundaries, or perhaps I'm afraid of how certain people would react if I did. If you catch yourself saying, I'm exhausted, ask yourself, why am I taking on more than I can handle? Why won't I let myself rest? Where do I get my energy, and where am I wasting it? If you say to yourself, my kids don't listen, then ask yourself, what am I saying that my kids don't care about, believe, or trust? Are my actions speaking louder than my words? Am I trying to make my kids into something that I want rather than being happy with who they are? Whenever you say, I hate, ask yourself, what are my emotions trying to teach me? What does this situation bring out in me that makes me lose control? When you say that you're just lazy, ask yourself, when did I stop caring and why? If you call yourself a loser, also say to yourself, perhaps it's been so long since I felt capable of winning that I've forgotten what winning looks like. Perhaps I need to do one thing that I can feel proud of so that I can remember how it feels to win. You hear yourself saying, people are selfish. Reflection asks you to consider, why have I made it my business to judge people? Why do I get so frustrated when people are just being themselves? Or you say, he has no respect. Well, consider, perhaps I haven't earned his respect. Do I respect him enough to care? Or she makes me crazy. Why do I lose my focus when I'm around her? Nobody told me. Why didn't I discover the problem on my own? Have I really been expecting others to do my thinking for me? Or maybe you say, people never listen. Well, perhaps I haven't said anything of value. Before we move on, I need to give you an important word of warning. Do not share your reflective insights with others at this time. When shared in the wrong manner, reflective insights are likely to cause unconstructive confrontations. We will learn how to share reflective insights constructively later in Rule 12, the power of communication and understanding, and in Rule 13, the power of persuasion and influence. For now, this week, simply practice reflecting as you listen to yourself and others. So what's the bottom line on reflection? Emerson once said, what you are screams so loudly I can't hear a word you're saying. Cluttered words reflect a cluttered mind, just as a cluttered room reflects a cluttered life. If nobody understands you, then maybe you need to reconsider what you have to say. When you clean up a mess without cleaning up the mind that created the mess, you'll only be cleaning up the mess again tomorrow. The designs of your life can only be affected and fixed from inside you. Any fix on the outside will only be a temporary patch, a band-aid, as long as the underlying and chronic problems within you remain unchanged. So don't keep patching the hull of a poorly designed boat. Get off the river and reflect upon your design. Where does your present design keep landing you? And where would you rather head? The currents that keep engulfing you can actually inspire your new design. The power of reflection will help you to spot your leaks. To learn more about Navigating Life's online video courses, please visit the following website: Once there, you will find links to the paperback, hardback, and digital versions of this course's companion book, A River Worth Riding, 14 Rules for Navigating Life. You will also find links to our Ask the Navigator blog, our video discussion groups and schedule, our mailing list, and much more. If you'd like to contact Navigating Life directly, you can email us at dearnavigator@gmail.com. Until our next lesson, may you have a worthwhile ride.